The air in the Lisbon café was thick with the scent of strong coffee, cheap tobacco, and quiet desperation. It was 1941. Neutral Portugal was anything but. It was a viper's nest of spies, a chaotic marketplace of secrets where allegiances were as fluid as the port wine that flowed in the city's taverns. Seated at a small wobbly table, a man named Juan Pujol García tried to control the frantic beating of his heart. To any observer, he was just another Spaniard, perhaps a businessman trying to escape the shadow of his brutal civil war. But in his mind, he was on the most dangerous stage of his life, and he hadn't even rehearsed his lines. Across from him sat a man named Federico, a German agent attached to the embassy. His eyes were cold, analytical, scanning Pujol with a mixture of suspicion and professional interest. Pujol had spent weeks crafting a persona, a fanatically pro-Nazi government official with access to sensitive information in Madrid and the ability to travel to Britain. It was all a lie. He was a failed chicken farmer and hotel manager who despised fascism with every fiber of his being. He had offered his services to the British 3 times, and 3 times they had shown him the door. So he had decided on a plan so audacious, so utterly insane, that it just might work. If the British wouldn't let him fight the Nazis as a friend, he would do it as an enemy. He slid a folded piece of paper across the table. His hand trembled slightly. He hoped Federico didn't notice. The paper contained his first intelligence report. It was a masterpiece of fiction, painstakingly created in his small Lisbon apartment using 3 simple tools: a tourist's blue guide to Great Britain, a map, and a railway timetable. He'd never even been to England. His report detailed troop movements he had supposedly observed, describing soldiers with a penchant for beer and complaining about the food, details he felt gave his lies the texture of truth. Federico picked up the paper, his face unreadable. The seconds stretched into an eternity. This was the moment. He would either be embraced as a new asset for the Third Reich, or he would be dragged into a dark alley and never seen again. The German's lips curled into a faint, thin smile. "Interesting," he said. "We will be in touch, Arabelle." They had given him a code name. The game had begun. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Cosmic Conquerors channel. Before we start, I hope you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you receive all the new content. And also share this story with your friends so it reaches as many people as possible. If you have a story, write it in the comments. Maybe we'll choose it for the next video. Let's begin the story. Pay close attention, because in the world of shadows, the person you trust the most is the one holding the sharpest knife. Juan Pujol García was not a man destined for espionage. He was a quiet, unassuming man who had tried his hand at many things and failed at most. But the Spanish Civil War had instilled in him a profound hatred for the extremism that was tearing Europe apart, both fascist and communist. He saw in Nazi Germany a darkness that had to be stopped, and he felt a moral duty to contribute to its defeat. When Britain stood alone against Hitler, he knew he had to act. But the professionals at the British Embassy in Madrid saw only an eccentric Spaniard with a wild story and no experience. They didn't see the fire in his eyes, the iron will, or the almost supernatural talent for deception that lay dormant within him. So, Pujol, now codenamed Arabelle by his new German masters, began his work. From Lisbon, he spun a web of intricate lies. He told the Abwehr, German military intelligence, that he had successfully moved to London and was now recruiting a network of agents. He invented his first sub-agent, a KLM pilot who could fly intelligence out of the country. Then came others. He created them from whole cloth, giving them backstories, personalities, and access to different sectors of British society. His reports, written with meticulous care, were a blend of publicly available information, plausible fabrications, and astute psychological observations about the British character. To make his reports seem authentic, he detailed his supposed expenses, down to the last penny, billing the Germans for journeys and bribes that never happened. The Germans were delighted. They were paying for an entirely fictional spy ring, and they were eating it up. They considered Arabelle their most valuable asset in Britain. The sheer absurdity of the situation was staggering. Pujol was feeding the German war machine intelligence he was concocting from a library, thousands of miles from the action. He made mistakes, of course. In one report, he mentioned that a contact in Glasgow was a man who would do anything for a liter of wine, not realizing that in Scotland, getting wine was nearly impossible, and a man like that would ask for a pint of beer or a glass of whiskey. But the Germans, in their arrogance, never questioned it. They believed him completely. Meanwhile, in the code-breaking halls of Bletchley Park and the quiet offices of MI5 in London, a puzzle was emerging. Intercepted German communications spoke of a highly effective spy network in Britain, run by an agent named Arabelle. The British Counterintelligence Service, the XX Committee, or Double Cross System, was baffled. They had a tight grip on every German agent in the country. They were all either captured, turned, or under surveillance. This Arabelle was a ghost. He was reporting on events with uncanny accuracy, yet he didn't seem to exist. The fear was that a master spy was operating undetected right under their noses. It was only when one of Arabelle's transmissions was cross-referenced with another intercepted message that the truth began to dawn. Arabelle had reported on the sailing of a convoy from Liverpool. The date he gave was correct, the ships were correct, but he reported that the convoy was sailing before it had actually left the port. A real spy would have reported it after the fact. This ghost was predicting the future. Or, more likely, he was getting his information from public naval announcements and simply guessing the timing. He wasn't in Liverpool at all. MI5 realized this wasn't a master spy. This was something else entirely. After a frantic search, they finally located the source, an oddball Spaniard in Lisbon who had tried to volunteer his services months ago. The man they had rejected had, on his own initiative, become Germany's top agent in Britain without ever setting foot in the country. In April 1942, Juan Pujol was smuggled into the United Kingdom. He was met by his new case officer, a sharp, bilingual MI5 agent named Thomas "Tommy" Harris. The two men, one a charismatic Spanish fantasist and the other a cool-headed British intelligence officer, formed an unlikely but brilliant partnership. They set Pujol up in a safe house in a London suburb. The British gave him a new code name, one that would become legendary in the annals of espionage, Garbo, because he was, in their words, the greatest actor in the world. The real work was about to begin. Together, Pujol and Harris took Garbo's fledgling network of imaginary agents and expanded it into a veritable army of phantoms. There were 27 of them in total, each with a carefully constructed personality and role. There was Agent 1, a KLM pilot. Agent 3 was a Gibraltarian waiter working in a club for military officers in Chislehurst. Agent 4 was Fred, a disgruntled soldier in the British Army. Agent 7 was a Welsh nationalist and leader of a fictitious fascist group called the Brothers of the Aryan World Order. Each agent had a life, a motivation, and a unique writing style. Pujol would spend hours composing their reports, channeling their voices, creating a symphony of deception that he and Harris would then broadcast to the Germans via painstakingly coded radio messages. His wife, Araceli, was brought over to live with him, but the secrecy and isolation of their life put immense strain on her. She threatened to expose him more than once, adding a layer of domestic tension to the already crushing pressure of his international deception. Garbo's greatest test, and his most stunning success, came in covering up a mistake. In late 1942, he failed to report on the massive Allied fleet gathering for Operation Torch, the invasion of North Africa. For a master spy, this was an unforgivable blunder that could have exposed him. Thinking on his feet, Pujol crafted a story of tragedy. He sent a frantic message to the Germans explaining that his key agent in Liverpool, the one responsible for monitoring the port, had fallen gravely ill and died just before the invasion fleet set sail. The intelligence had died with him. To sell the lie, he and Harris concocted an entire backstory for the agent's widow, who was now supposedly receiving a pension from the British government. As the final masterful touch, they had a fake death notice for the non-existent agent printed in the local Liverpool newspaper. The Germans not only believed the story, but sent their condolences and a payment to Garbo to support the grieving widow. He had turned a catastrophic failure into a triumph of credibility. By 1944, Garbo was the cornerstone of the most ambitious deception plan in military history, Operation Fortitude. The Allies were preparing for D-Day, the invasion of Normandy. To succeed, they needed to convince the Germans that the main attack was coming elsewhere, specifically at the Pas-de-Calais, the narrowest point of the English Channel.
This would trick Hitler into holding his most powerful panzer divisions in reserve away from the real landing beaches. The entire weight of this deception fell on Garbo's shoulders. His fictional network went into overdrive, flooding the German high command with thousands of messages. They reported the massing of a phantom army, the first US Army group, FUSAG, in southeast England. They described seeing its commander, the fearsome General George S. Patton, reviewing troops. They sent reports on the buildup of landing craft in the ports of Kent. It was all a theatrical illusion, supported by inflatable tanks, dummy planes, and fake radio traffic. But it was Garbo's intelligence that gave it the ring of truth. The pressure was immense. A single slip-up could cost hundreds of thousands of lives. On June 5th, the eve of the invasion, Garbo received an urgent message from his German handlers. They expected an invasion imminently and demanded a report. The Allied fleet was already sailing for Normandy. Harris and Pujol had to time their next move perfectly. They deliberately kept Garbo off the air, making it seem like he was being watched. Then, in the early hours of June 6th, just after the Normandy landings began, they sent the most important message of Garbo's career. He radioed Berlin, reporting on the invasion, but framing it exactly as the Allies wanted. He insisted, with desperate urgency, that the Normandy landings were a diversion, a feint designed to draw German forces away from the Pas-de-Calais, where the real, much larger invasion force was about to strike. He begged his handlers to tell the high command not to move the panzer divisions. In Berlin, Hitler read Garbo's report. He trusted his master spy, Arabel, implicitly. The report confirmed his own flawed intuition. He ordered the 15th Army and its powerful tank divisions to remain in Pas-de-Calais, waiting for an attack that would never come. For 2 crucial months after D-Day, as Allied soldiers fought and died on the beaches of Normandy, the bulk of Germany's best troops sat idle, waiting for a ghost army. Garbo's deception had worked beyond anyone's wildest dreams. He had saved countless lives and helped turn the tide of the war. The irony was complete. On July 29, 1944, Juan Pujol García was awarded the Iron Cross by Germany for his services to the Third Reich. 5 months later, he was secretly made a member of the Order of the British Empire by King George VI for his services to the Allies. He remains the only person to have been decorated by both sides in World War II. With the war over, Garbo's mission was complete, but his life of deception had left him a marked man. He was terrified of retribution from surviving Nazis who might one day uncover his betrayal. With the help of MI5, he vanished. In 1949, they helped him fake his death from malaria in Angola. The world and his own family in Spain believed he was gone. Juan Pujol García, the chicken farmer who fooled Hitler, ceased to exist. But the man himself lived on. He moved to Venezuela, remarried, and started a family who knew nothing of his past. He ran a small gift shop and bookstore, living a life of quiet, peaceful anonymity. For decades, the greatest double agent of the war was a ghost, his story locked away in classified files. He lived in the shadows, a silent guardian of one of history's greatest secrets. A man who had held the fate of the world in his hands and then simply walked away. The war was over, but for him, the vigilance never truly ended. He had won his battle, but the cost was his own identity, his own history. He was a hero no one could ever thank, a ghost in his own life story. In their shoes, would you have made that sacrifice for the mission? And with that, we've reached the end of the story, but stories don't end here. If you liked this one, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new stories. And if something caught your attention, leave it in the comments and let's discuss it together. I'll be waiting for your opinions. See you in the next story. Goodbye.